What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. In today's episode, we welcome long-running instrumental duo Falcon Arrow onto the show. Early this summer, they released their latest record, Patterns in Noise, and added another chapter to their decade-plus career. We get into the album's sound and inspirations, how their music has grown and remained familiar over the years, and more. Without any further ado, here's my interview with Matt and Dave of Falcon Arrow on the Ear Coffee Podcast. Last day.
I can go first. I also run a label called Turn and Crow, and Turn and Crow is releasing an album by Velvet Vision.
Oh, really?
And just listened to their new album today and sent the order in for the cassettes.
That's fantastic news. I love Betty's music. That's great.
I listen to music for a job, so the last thing I was working on was a composition by called From Jewish Life.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get into it. Before we go too much further, let's do some introductions. What are your names? What are your roles in Falcon Arrow? Any other pertinent information before we go further?
You can go first, Dave.
Oh, my name is Dave Kemp. What else?
In the band, any other information you feel called by the spirit to share?
Yeah, I'm the drummer, and I don't know what else to say.
That's perfect. No expectation.
Right.
I'm Matt, and I play bass. And I guess, like I mentioned, I not only in Falcon Arrow, but I also run Turn and Crow, a cassette label.
That's super sick. We love that. So I like starting interviews out on the same way. I find that basically anyone that makes music such a significant part of their life, whether that's running a label, writing and recording your own music, doing all the things that come with that, you must have a very special relationship with music, even just starting as a listener. So I'm curious, do you remember the first time you really connected with a piece of music or just something on a deeper level, when you felt like it was something that you could kind of connect with directly instead of just something that was maybe like obviously playing in the store, playing on the radio that like friends or siblings or other people were recommending? But when did it become something that you would connect with to the point where you would make it such an integral part of your life, to end up making all the music as Falcon Arrow and all the other ventures?
I mean, as a child, I remember at our house, my mom would listen to a lot of records, and most of them are really terrible, but she also had some classical records. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, classical music would be so awesome if it just had drums. and that might mean like a rock beat, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I have percussion, but and I think I've always been kind of aspiring to actually do that.
It's a good question. I kind of always liked music a lot, and I would kind of have my favorites that I would listen to over and over again. But when I was young, like Kurt Cobain died and stuff like that, and like liking Nirvana is like probably what inspired me to like play music,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to just be someone who listened to it.
Yeah, I'm sure that the band that launched 1,000 ships, among many. Do you remember the first bands you each were a part of, like the first songs that you wrote or compositions? Do you have any recollection of those early explorations? And if you do, or even just other early bands, early songs, early pieces, what is something that connects that time in your life, those bands, those songs, with the music you make now, or the music you've made in the kind of more recent years?
I mean, you're referring to like with Falcon Arrow?
No, I mean just like if you remember, if Falcon Arrow was the first band you were a part of, or like was your first kind of step into playing in a band beyond just practicing drums? I'd love to hear just about those initial experiences and kind of the through line between those, even pre-Falcon Arrow, and what you do now as a member of Falcon Arrow, or in any other musical pursuits you have as drummers, as bassists, as musicians.
Well, I think, I mean, I played in band, one gig kind of stuff, and then in college, first 2 years of college was similar, but then the last 3 years of college, I was in this band called the Main Grocery Shopper, and but then I had switched to electronic drums, but I wasn't like Roland kind of electronic drums. I was more in like the Bill Bruford School electronic drums. We were trying to push the instrument to be a new instrument.
Mm-hmm.
It's not drum set orientated anymore. It's more like triggering sounds and rhythm, and that idea of like just pushing the envelope for the instrument is still what I'm you know, I'm not very successful. I don't think I'm really doing anything that's novel, and it's a bit arrogant to think that you are, since there are so many absolutely amazing drummers nowadays. But that is what I am. I was aspiring to do, is always push the envelope for the instrument, and that started in college.
Yeah, I don't think that's arrogant. I think that's a constant evolution, or a constant aspiration that we as musicians can all work towards.
My first band I was in high school. I was in a punk band called FMA in the Quad Cities, which we were from Davenport, Iowa. And it had kind of a small punk scene, but it meant a lot to us at the time. And I think one thing that's like a through line, I think, is, you know, there's just always something like magical and special when there's a show. And like a lot of like my socialization of how to like act as a band member and to treat other bands and to be someone who plays live music came from those days. And I think it's still important, like, I think to think about how that something so long ago would influence you still. But, you know, it's like, it's still very special to play live music. And I try not to take that for granted. And then, you know, I was in other bands. I was in a band in college called MGM. And that band is when I decided I never wanted to write first chorus songs again. So it was more like a regular rock band, you know, and like I sang in it. I think that was a precursor to what we ended up doing with Falcon Arrow.
Wonderful. How did Falcon Arrow specifically then start? How did you two meet? How did the band form? Because obviously the band's been together for a blessedly long time. But how did you first connect and decide to start working together? And did you have any anticipation it would go this long, I guess, or that'll kind of segue in?
Yeah. I started it, and for about a year I played with another drummer and it didn't work out. And then I think we met on like Craigslist, right, Dave? Does that sound right?
Something like that.
Yeah, some kind of I don't know, maybe Craigslist is still around, I guess, but some website thing. Yeah, you know,
it was a long time ago.
Yeah, I kept the name for some reason because it was kind of the same stuff that we were doing, but we wrote all new songs, and yeah, so we kind of had a one step going, and then yeah, we just kind of started going right away. We recorded our first EP like in the first few months of playing a show, and then just always try to keep working, and it's really wild to me to think that we're still doing it all this time ago. That would have been 2008 that we played our first show.
Wow.
And our EP came out in March in 2009, I think. Does that sound right, Dave?
Yeah, it was early 2009. That's all I remember. It could have been February.
Yeah.
So
there were the two EPs in 2009.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, Les. Yeah.
No, I think there were the two EPs in 2009. So yeah, really prolific from the get-go.
Yeah.
What were you saying? I didn't mean to cut you off either.
I forget now too, but yeah.
No worries. What's something that you've learned, or I guess, or really has spoken to you as a musician from being in a band for 15, 16 years, for being just in a creative partnership or a creative relationship for that long? And how do you think from those first shows and those first EPs back in the late aughts, how has the band's creative process stayed consistent? How, if there's been like some kind of, again, bring back to through lines, and leading into the new album and the more recent material, how has that process and that creativity evolved, just with the two of you working together for quite some time?
Matt, you can take that one.
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, like our songwriting process has always been the same. We've always practiced at Dave's basement, and he's always been able to record new material as we're like working on it. Normally one of us will have an idea, most of the time Dave probably, and then we just kind of like, okay, let's just work on this, and then we record it, and then we listen to it for the whole week, and then the next week we come and say, okay, let's work on it again, and we scrap the stuff we didn't like, fine tune the stuff we did. More times than not, probably like 80% of the time, it ends up being something that we record. Sometimes it changes radically though. So, I mean, it might be philosophical whether it's the same thing or not, but, and that's kind of been the main way we've written new material, for the whole time. So, it works. So we keep going, but there's been at least for my stuff, there's been a tendency because of like adding more loop pedals and other effects just to kind of make things like more and more complicated, more and more things going on at once. Like the early stuff was very inspired by minimalism in a way that it was really stripped down, and it was very obvious what was going on. And now it's the exact same thing going on. Everything's created live right in front of people on shows, but there's just so much going on that it gets kind of hidden, and it's kind of a little harder to parse out what's really going on.
Yeah. Having seen y'all live, that was one of the most exciting things about having, since a couple of my friends took me out to a show to see y'all, and then listening to the records after that, it's like, oh, this is, if not outright the same, essentially the same. And that's, I mean, like you were saying, that's just the live creation process has been so important. What is that like? Is there a reason why is even like the difference between playing on record and playing live? Why you've wanted there to be so much verisimilitude, or just if not consistency? But like, have you wanted to try, or like been led in a direction to try more, like things that can't necessarily be replicated live, even with a different like pedal setup or new gear and new evolutions that way? Or has that I guess transparency between recorded and live always been super important to you guys as a band?
Even though this is more of Matt's category, but I mean, we're always been limited by what we can do on stage. And this goes back, and this is partially formed by, what I said, my band in college, I had electronic drums, experiences with sound men trying to do things that are not what they're used to. And as soon as you start bringing in sequencers or samples or what have you, now you have kind of a hybrid of electronic sounds and acoustic or acoustic electric sounds, and that's just asking for more problems. And we often are told by people, the audience, that we sound best when we're not even run through a PA. So, if we can make our live setup as simple as possible, that's what we're trying to do. And so we're not, making it more complicated. That's one of the main driving purposes or reasons behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Matt, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I guess part of it for me, and Dave and I might be different on this, but to me it goes back to I learned how to play shows like in punk bands, and it was all about like the live performance was very important. And so I try to keep that in mind. I mean, we certainly in our catalog had many songs that are impossible to create exactly the same way live.
Yeah.
Like shortcuts were taken with the loops, and or just things were normally condensed in a way to make it a better listening experience. And oftentimes we just don't play those songs live. You know, there's a certain amount of songs on the album that we could play exactly the same way, and it seems like those are often the ones that we tend to play live. And also it has to do with the type of song. Normally when we get carried away with studio trickery, it's like some long 12-minute song, which is not necessarily what we're going to play in a 30-minute set at 3-3-1 or something. But I don't know, it's just always we often talk, you know, every band has their own thing, every musical act, not even necessarily a band. But for me, I think there's a real something important about creating it as a live experience. And it's something that I'm like really interested in now is like what is the point of doing this? Like, especially with all this AI stuff, you know, it's like, I think there's inherent value in creating something for yourself. When you create art, there's something you gain out of that. And to me, if it's just like playing play on a keyboard or like a computer or something, and it's just doing all the work for you, like I would lose out on that as a performer, as an artist. So like I like the fact that we're creating an experience live, and that's good that you thought it sounded like the performance. Certainly in the beginning, especially, it often would not, and it would be a matter of trying to put out the fires live on stage in front of everyone. But now we got it down pretty good after doing it for so many years that we can create it.
Yeah, it was just last year, I think, that I saw y'all. So y'all were very road tested and gig tested at that point, and it was a great set with, I think it was at the Terminal Bar with a Whisper the Rabbit. That was a very cool bill.
Would it have been Dusty's maybe?
Maybe it was in like North. I don't know. It was kind of small, but
probably Dusty's.
It was Dusty's. Yes. Okay. Years, so. Yeah, it was Dusty's. Not. I'm thinking Terminal Bar's different. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Yeah. I don't know if I cut you off again. Did you have anything else to add, or are we?
No, that's good. Thanks for circling back.
Of course, that was a great answer. Yeah. So let's talk about the new record, Patterns and Noise, which is a great title for the record.
Thanks.
Release date sometime this summer. I know you mentioned just kind of waiting since vinyl and physical has been such an integral part of the band, and some of the first times I've experienced the band's music beyond live were people playing the record, so I know how important that is.
Yeah. Well, we'll have it on streaming platforms on June 1st.
June 1st.
And I think probably July 8th, hopefully it'll be the release date. It seems now we're still waiting on the physical records to get made. So
yeah, I know how that goes in these times. Cool. That is good to know. That gives us all something to look forward to. But with the new record, it's the first one in, I think, 3 or 4 years. What was this album's writing process like specifically? I know you've talked about just the consistency and the reliability of the process you two have established, but what were some of the ways that you found, how did you find ways to stay creative in ways that at least felt interesting and felt new while still staying loyal and staying faithful to this time-tested approach and making an album that at least I very much enjoyed listening to, and hopefully others will, and hopefully you all enjoyed making?
Well, it took a long time to make this album, and we had the pandemic in the middle of it and everything. So some of these songs are we wrote them a long time ago. But as far as keeping inspiration, being an instrumental 2-piece band, we kind of have a lot of freedom to bring in inspiration from a lot of unusual resources, like what's the Ethiopian jazz thing that what's that, Matt?
Yeah, that song's called Nostalgia. Is that right now? I heard an Ethiopian jazz song I really liked.
Cool. Well, if you remember the song and remember the release, we'll plug it and we can or maybe you're going to find it right now.
Find it.
Oh yeah, it's just called Tazita, and that means nostalgia. And so we called the song Tazita Zone, based off of Nostalgia Zone, which is a comic shop I go to in South Minneapolis. So,
but Tazita is like a subgenre of Ethiopian jazz.
Yeah, like ballady kind of, or like real chill kind of.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of an unusual place to draw inspiration from, I think. That's the point, is that we can take from anywhere. I mean, on that same song, the beat that I'm playing is derived from the 3/4 rhythm that is the background beat. So I'm taking a rhythm from a Terminator soundtrack and putting it and juxtaposing it on this melody that Matt came up with that's inspired from Ethiopian jazz. So
yeah,
really the limits. There really are very few limits what we can draw from.
Yeah, that's one thing that really stood out. Both just like kind of investigating some of the references or trying to. I couldn't find anything on Tazita. I think I tried to translate that, but that's a fascinating combination of just very different things. But I mean, the band takes influence from so many different places, whether it's different kinds of like literature, mythology. I think there's, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the songs on this record, is that an Ursula K. Le Guin reference, or is that something different?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
From the Dispossessed. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you kind of, is it always just kind of like picking and pulling from the things that are exciting you elsewhere in your life, whether it's Ethiopian jazz, great 80s soundtrack, or great fiction, or like what are there any like limits, or like what has that been like, just continually drawing from all these different places over your career, but especially with the new record?
Yeah, I don't think there are limits per se, but I do think
I don't want to put you on the spot to like cut anything off.
Yeah, for me, Dave and I might be different on this too, but for me, a lot of times the titles are just something to call it. So I'll just kind of look through my books and we like to use words that are either misspelled or kind of weird twists, like Tazita Zone, Nostalgia Zone, like weird twists on things like that. And sometimes that'll kind of influence the music to me. Sometimes it doesn't, but I feel at this point, I feel like oftentimes, like our own, like the whole Falcon Arrow is the biggest influencer on Falcon Arrow going forward for me. Like, it's about like trying new stuff. Like I tried some new pedals on this one, tried different tones, like try to get heavier on the low end. And when the albums come together, there's a point where maybe you have about half an album worth, and then it becomes like, what do we need to flush this thing out to show the range? Like Tazita Zone was a good example. It's like we needed a slow, chill song, or like something more chill. So there's that, or the first song, Knob and Tooth, was one where it's like we need something that's going to open the album. So we need something that's like really going to grab people, got some energy.
Oh, that was like Phil, right? The owner of the record label. He really likes Demolition Derby, right?
He liked yeah. Oh my god, all these are like we have this other thing too that's like a lot of the band names either start with D or M. Not uncoincidentally Dave and Matt, but so he likes the song Derelict, which opened Tower, and also Demolition Derby, which kind of has a more punchy start to it. So then that inspired us to write Knob and Tooth, I guess.
Yeah, Phil wanted another song like that, so Knob and Tooth was what we came up with.
Yeah,
and we like to do trilogies too, or something where like you take a theme and explore it in like 3 different ways. And that's we did that on the last album too, and it's kind of been a rewarding process to kind of different than just exploring one 12-minute song, to have like 3, 4, 5-minute songs and kind of come at it different ways. So we have a trilogy in this one that starts the side B of the album. So
cool. Yeah, I will be thinking of that next time I listen to the record. When did the album's musical like sound world kind of start to take shape? Was it, you mentioned like you get kind of halfway through writing what could be an album and then start thinking about, okay, what can we do to show the range? What can we do to flesh this out and show the full breadth of what we want to do or what we've been excited by lately? But when was that point, or what was that kind of thought process like with Patterns and Noise specifically? When did the world kind of start to take shape?
I think that as a band, where our sound is just always kind of, at least for myself, I always have these like pet ideas that I'm trying to explore, and I try, stick these into these songs. And just like anyone else, you have these ideas, and then you work through them, and then you have another one, and they kind of have their own sounds, and it was just that for my part of what I contribute. That's the linear evolution. It's just simply, what is my current pet like idea? Like, how can I make a drum beat off of this, or how can I play a double bass style drum beat without double bass, and just like things like that, or like
challenges to the self almost.
For a while there was really this idea of like a modular drum beat where you have these components that can be mismatched over each other. Like, so you have it's based off like what a piano player does, where you have a left-hand comp, right, accompanying part, and then you have a right-hand melody part, and those can kind of there's a level of modularity with that. So I came up with like left-hand part, right-hand part, and that was what I did for a song called, on a new album called Erasti Monopoly. So that was like my pet idea for a while, and I've moved on since then. So there'll be no more songs like that.
Yeah, I think the first song we wrote was Missourians in the Darien Gap, which we wrote like right after we were done with Occurrence, and like we probably could have put it on there if we really wanted to, record it real quick and put it on the last album, but we didn't. And I feel like even though that's the oldest one, it really I really liked it as a song, and it kind of helped influence me like where to go from it. It was kind of like heavier in a lot of ways, and I kind of kept exploring that, but it also has real busy high parts, which I also later explored on a lot of the songs too. So that kind of somehow fit the groundwork, and I'm glad we didn't put it on the last album. I'm glad we have it with this album.
Yeah. Cool. Maybe, I don't know if you'll need to take a second to decide this, but walk me through kind of the process. You already kind of did this for the Darien Gap, but walk me through how you created just one of the songs, just an example song that you think maybe even more so as a microcosm of the album as a whole, just from your perspective versus the perspective of listeners. Is there one that stands out that you have any insight into, or is it? I mean, I don't know.
Think because of the pandemic, and Matt and I were separate for a lot of this album, and there was like a year and a half where I didn't see Matt. It was very strange.
Yeah, that's our decade of seeing each other every week for practice and shows, and then it was.
So because of that, there was some very different creation on some of these songs where Matt just had an idea, and he just would send me, the idea, and I would be just put a drum beat on it. And because of that, they weren't as some of the songs, some of these songs predate the pandemic, so they're definitely created the old way. But some of these, because I wasn't this every week we were working on it and refining it. It was more like I'd put more of just it wasn't as the beats weren't as evolved. They're more like just this will work through the whole song kind of thing. It wasn't changes every 8 bars or whatever. So that was, like I said, that's the main difference on this album. It'll probably ever be this case again.
Knock on wood, it's not. But yeah, or just to answer the question though, there's a few that we kind of had to wrap up at the end, and we recorded it in kind of batches. So some of the songs we didn't finalize until more recently than when we started recording. But something like Duke LaRue, and Dave, chime in if I'm wrong on anything, but I think you had a beat or something, and then yeah, I probably just started with that first little thing that turns into the intro, and I like that. Like, it kind of has like a groove to it with what Dave was doing, and then a lot of times they end up getting flushed out in the order that they end up. Then I was like, well, this needs a bass part. Wrote that, and then kind of the middle fine tuning, or that whole thing where the reverse part comes in. That was probably just messing around one day, and I was like, oh, I like how this sounds, so we'll keep it like that. And then it's like, then you need to figure out an ending. Normally that it's a fine balance between falling into the same formulas all the time and trying to mix it up. So like on that one, I think it was kind of stuck at a stagnant place, and I was like, okay, it just needs like a whole new thing. So then it has those arpeggios and kind of the minor stuff going on and a new melody, and then it jumps back to the other one just to make it kind of different, and then it's just like a big crescendo heavy stuff at the end with like the real high stuff going. I really like the difference in the juxtaposition of that, like the real bright high stuff and the low heavy stuff, and just having it be like a wall of sound. And then Dave's going crazy on the drum, or playing real wild on the drums, and then it's like, well, just to kind of wrap it up, we'll just kind of go back to the beginning real quick at the end, and then we're done.
Yeah.
Well, Duke LaRue, for me, I had written something, and I think only about 20%, like it was with some where he, quote unquote, jammed out. I think Matt had like his idea pretty well figured out, and I like tossed like 80% of what I had, and then just kind of used what Matt had and like re-inspired. From what he did, I came up with totally new parts, and then that had so many parts that I'd like create this storyline in my head, which I still have memorized and still have to think about when I play that song. So it's like I have like this story, like, oh, Duke LaRue does this, and this is the sound of that happening, which would be cool to like turn into a cartoon or something. But
yeah.
Anyway, that song was more similar to The Old Way, even though that is one of the last songs we wrote for the album. That's back to like The Old Way, where it was this constant refining.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone using like a story or kind of something like that to remember the parts of the song. Usually that's how like people remember like their monologues in like theater, but I love that as a way to remember kind of like the plot of the song for the drums, but also just for the song in general. That's great. Specifically thinking about this, about patterns and noise, but even going beyond that, describe a moment when you felt like the art that you both make as Falcon Arrow, that the music you make was really fulfilling or accomplishing what you wanted to. Hopefully there's many instances of that over the band's history, but if there's one, again, keeping patterns and noise in mind, that stands up where you really had that pride and like, yeah, this is why we keep on making music. This is why you love being in Falcon Arrow. This is why you do what you do.
It's been a while. But let's hope maybe it's like you remember some shows from the past that were really great, and you hope that those happen again. Obviously there were, especially when we were touring. That was over 10 years ago now, though. Our last tour was over 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But no, that show in Milwaukee where we played with, what was that band, Matt? That other band from here?
Was it Brute Heart?
Yeah, Broodheart, the two Crystals. I remember there's two people in that band named Crystal. I couldn't remember their name. Yeah, the Broodheart show in Milwaukee. That was a great show. Um, that was from the Twin Cities, and we both kicked some serious butts. I was like, "Hey, Minneapolis came to Milwaukee to really show how to do it." So
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Yeah, that it's a good feeling when you go out of town and play to an audience of like people who have no idea what to expect, and they really like it. You know, it's a special feeling, but I don't know. I get it just really means a lot to me when like people come up to me and like, you know, I just really like that show. Or, you know, like they come up and like, I've been listening to your music and I really like it, like strangers. And like, you know, there's just like millions of hours of music to listen to. So anytime someone takes time to listen to the music we create, it really means a lot to me. And then to go the next step, you know, since the pandemic, I've been trying to take the effort to tell people when you appreciate what they're doing, because it's easy to just enjoy it and not tell them. But it means so much when you do tell people. So I appreciate when people approached me when I'm a stranger and just to tell me that, because it does mean a lot to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Kind of connected with that, but thinking a little bit more broadly. What's something that you each really love or appreciate about your own art, or about your own even creative process that you bring to Falcon Arrow, or anything else that you work on, whether it's the label, if you have any other artistic passions, whatever it may be? What's something that you really, you know, you just kind of warms your heart. You're proud of you're something about your approach and your creativity that you connect with, and that validates you as an artist.
You want me to
Well, I
go,
think
Dave?
I like making stuff in general, and it creating new songs is gives you the same feeling as like when you know you've made something out of metal or wood or a picture or some kind of artwork or design or anything. Just having brought something that was in your mind to fruition is a good feeling, and music's just another one of those things that I do that does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just you know, at the time when Dave and I first started this idea, it was like a very specific idea. Like, Dave will play drums, I will play a bass, we will just repeat what I play, and it has to be made live. And to think that that has carried us for 15 years and like 5 full-length albums and like 5 EPs and like, you know, hours and hours of music, it's just like really staggering to me when I sit back and think about it, especially when you listen like the first EPs and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. Like it's real obvious what the idea is then, but it's still the same idea. And you listen to something now, it's like, I feel like when I listen to it, I feel like we've come a long way.
Yeah.
Like in a lot of ways, like, but it was a journey, and like I can hear the journey if I listen to the old songs, and I can hear what we were thinking about, and I find that really fulfilling just to be able to still keep doing it, because a lot of the people, like the people I played in high school bands with, they don't play in bands anymore. The people I played in college with, most of them don't play in bands anymore. A lot of the bands that we started playing with when we started don't play anymore, and some of those bands shot into other bands, and those bands don't play anymore. So it's just like, you know, it's like just the longevity. It means a lot to me, and the fact that Dave and I still find it fulfilling means a lot, and I appreciate that Dave still finds it fulfilling too. So
Yeah. I love that. It's I can't imagine what it feels like as the actual members of the band, but even just like going back and seeing the band's full history, I kind of have a little bit of that draw drop moment where even within like the past like 3 or 4 years since we started the podcast, there have been so many bands that have broken up, splintered off, da da da, like you were saying, and that's only like a third of the time, if even that. But glad y'all are still out there, still making music. Excited for the new record. Again, it's called Patterns and Noise. It'll be out digitally on June 1st, vinyl coming within a month or so after that. Any other ways people could check out the record or support y'all? Beyond, I guess, just buying older records if you have any left, because I know those all are worth exploring and they sound great on wax if there's any copies.
Yeah, we still have the full length albums. I think all the 7 inches and stuff is sold out, but we have a single on there now, which kind of is a little taste of the album up on Bandcamp. And yeah, we have a few shows coming up at Eagles, I think, and we're playing Art of World.
Oh, cool.
We'll see when this airs if that's happened yet or not, but it's always great if people can come see us live, and we have t-shirts and records and cassettes and everything, so it really means a lot when people buy the merch. And if you don't have that much money, come to a free show and buy the merch. That means more than paying the admission to us, because that means you're gonna hopefully listen to the music. That's why we do it. So.
Or if you're a venue, ask if we can play.
Yeah,
definitely can confirm, having seen y'all a few times. We played with y'all at Eagles, because I don't know if I don't think we talked, but National Park Service played with y'all at Eagles a few months ago, and that was lucky to see y'all a second time.
That was a fun show, I thought. Yeah, with Choke Cherry and
Choke Cherry. Yeah, they were great too.
Another old school band.
But yeah, I encourage any venues or any bookers out there to get these guys on the line. Yeah, definitely looking forward to the new record. Check it out when it is out. If it is out by the time you're hearing this, either or, definitely give it at least a listen. Support the band how you can. To wrap up, I love just finding out what local or underappreciated bands or artists that you have both been enjoying lately, or have played shows with lately, or just want to shout out. Like who are some specifically, want to emphasize the local scene, but if there's like a DIY band in like Texas that you think is really sick, then now would also be a perfect time to shout them out. But just spreading the love a little bit for telling people, suggesting some stuff for people to check out.
Well, it's very not Falcon Arrow, but I really like the local band Graveyard Club.
Oh yeah, they're fantastic.
But yeah, I really like them. I'm always listening to all the bands on Undercurrent Minneapolis, and there's so many. They put up so many videos that I have a hard time keeping straight which ones I liked and which ones I maybe don't like so much. But there was one this week that was really good. But also this band we're playing with in a few days, that's Wish Wash. I like them.
Wish Wash, okay.
Yeah, they just played at Memory Lanes this week, I think. So
oh, cool.
I'll do a little self-promotion, I guess.
Definitely.
On Turn & Crow, we got Velvet Vision. I just ordered the cassettes now. Hopefully that'll be out in a couple months. Great kind of synth pop. Originally from Minneapolis, then is in Santa Fe now. But
okay, that was gonna be my question. If they're still in New Mexico,
I think you all interviewed her Betty a little while ago, right?
Yeah, I've been a fan of Velvet Vision for a while, so that's phenomenal news. That there's new cassettes, there's new music on the way.
Yeah, it's a great album. Whispered the Rabbit has their album. They're just sending it to get pressed on vinyl, and vinyl and cassettes of that. And that's an awesome album. I've been listening to that for about a year now, and they finally got everything all done. They're a great instrumental band, just really awesome. War Cake is another friends of ours that are on the label. They are working on a new album, so kind of initial stages. So I've learned from doing the label, like everyone takes 6 to 12 months longer than they think they're going to need for an album. So I thought maybe it was just us, but it's everyone. So that'll hopefully be out sooner than later. So they got to record. But yeah, exciting stuff. A lot of great local music right now. It seems like there's kind of a new resurgence of it going on right now. It's cool.
Yeah, the last year or so has been fantastic. Definitely check out the label Turn & Crow. Check out anything on there forthcoming or the back catalog if you're looking for new stuff to check out, new cassettes to buy. Because I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority and I still buy cassettes all the time, but normalize buying cassettes. They're awesome. Cool. Well,
That really help out the band. It's good margin on cassette.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If only for that reason. It's only like $20. What's up, everyone? This is Wes. I'm chiming in at the end of the episode here because we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. We lost a bit of audio at the end when my recorder died. So I want to take this time to additionally thank the band for taking time out of their day to chat with me. Thank you to Matt and Dave, to Falcon Arrow. The new record, Patterns and Noise, is available now on Bandcamp, on any streaming service that you might choose. You can get vinyl through Solstice Records, also available online, as well as some other physical media. It's a great way to support the band if you have the means. It's a great record, fantastic record. So if you haven't listened to it, or you want to support the band, that's a great way to do so. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.